Depression. This podcast is dedicated to shedding light on mental illness through education and real-life examples. I am your host, Tamera Trotter, and I have suffered from chronic depression for most of my adult life. However, mental illness does not define me nor anyone who suffers with an oftentimes debilitating condition. I have learned how to live with chronic depression and thrive anyway. This year, 2020, suicide will become the number one cause of death in the world. I want to stop the stigmas associated with mental illness and educate everyone on the importance of emotional health and conducting a mental health assessment of children on a regular basis because suicide has increased among children between the ages of 8 to 14. We must take a mental health assessment of our children at least once per week. I believe that I have found one of the best ways for you to understand how someone who suffers with depression, how their mind works. And so I talked to you before about serotonin. And what I've learned about serotonin is that serotonin is produced naturally, and it has a direct effect on our mood. So you only have so much serotonin in your brain, and when you lack serotonin, it affects your mood. And so because depression is considered a mood disorder, that is why it is considered a disease. So please understand this. Depression is a disease, just like heart disease, just like any other disease out there. So once someone is diagnosed with depression, they cannot just turn it off and on. Hear me. Once someone is diagnosed with depression, they cannot just turn it off and on. If you look up the brain of someone who does not suffer with depression and the brain of someone that does suffer with depression, it is very different. And what you'll notice is that the brain of someone who suffers with depression has less serotonin. And that is why when you take antidepressants, those are considered inhibitors to increase that portion of your brain that has a direct effect on mood. So if you lack serotonin, it's harder for you to not necessarily be happy, but it's harder for you to not be so affected by the things that happen in your life. So this is why it's so important for you to be proactive, but more than that, you have to come up with and do other things in order to increase your serotonin even more. And those things consist of exercising, having a positive outlook, listening to music, and stimulating the muscle in your brain. So naturally, someone that suffers with depression is not going to be motivated to exercise. And that's why you have to push yourself to exercise in order to stay in balance. So I recently have someone very close to me who suffered a loss, a death of a parent. And I was immediately affected by what happened because I know how close this person was to her father. And so even though I did witness firsthand how traumatic and painful this event was, I still took on physical and emotional symptoms of my friend. And so I knew quickly that if I did not figure out how I was going to get through this, it was going to cause me to spiral downward, and I was going to end up in an episode of depression, and who knows how long that might have lasted. So, what I'm concerned about is that if you are not aware of how your mind works, you will easily start to believe certain things that aren't true. And I haven't really tapped into this very much because I don't have as strong a grasp on the concept that I do now. And so what I mean is, it's hard for you to figure out what is true and what's not true, because your mind is telling you one thing and it's not even close to reality. And that's a tough pill to swallow, because oftentimes we don't have the ability to know something for sure and be able to witness whether or not something is true. And let me give you an example. So let's just say that you live out of state and someone that you love is going through a traumatic experience, and you know that all you can do is call that person, text that person, but depending on how they're doing, it's only going to either convince you that what you're feeling is true or not, because you don't have any control over how that person is feeling and reacting. And you can't blame that person for not wanting to talk to you, because they're in their own pain and they're trying to get themselves better. They're trying to get their self to a better place and a better state. So you have to get to a point to where you rely on your relationship with that person. And I cannot stress to you enough how important knowing where you stand with another person and the relationship that you have with that person, and how important it is. So it's super important, and I believe that that's why people grow closer to other people and they develop deep relationships. And that's when defining moments like this take place, where you can fall back and rely on what you know about that relationship. However, it's still hard, because I found myself thinking about my friend and what she was going through, to where I almost made myself physically and emotionally sick. I had to catch myself, pull myself back and say, this is not going to be good for you or for anyone. And that is a marvelous revelation. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is that the mind of a depressed person plays tricks on you. Your mind plays tricks on you. And so you almost have to think that, hey, this isn't true. That's not true. That's not happening. That's not reality. Because even the most sane, the person who appears to have it all together, in your mind, could just be headed down a dark road, and you might be convinced that that's actually true. But you have to remember, you got to fall back on your relationship with that person and ask yourself, is this a behavior that this person would engage in? Because remember, just because someone is going through a tragic time, it doesn't mean that they still aren't able to use their critical thinking, and they're not able to pull into every arsenal that they possibly can in order to understand something. So I'm hoping that I'm not going too deep, but there's 3 points that I want to clarify. Number one, a person who suffers with depression cannot just turn their mood off and on. Are there some people who may be using their depression to garner sympathy and to get people to treat them differently or give them something that they want? Possibly. But I'm going to offer that is a very small percentage of people. I'm going to say less than 5%. Number two, the brain of a depressed person is far different than the brain of someone who is not depressed. So what is rational and seems logical to you is not rational nor logical to the person who suffers with depression or any other mental illness. That is why taking medication helps to balance the chemical imbalance in your brain. And generally, you'll have 3 different types of medicines that work together to help increase your mood. And so it's almost like leveling the person off. What it is, and I think this is a perfect way to explain it, is that you're leveling the playing field. You are leveling the playing field for the person who suffers with depression by giving them medication. So you're giving them the equal opportunity, as equal as it possibly can be, to understand a situation and be able to see things clearly. That's really what it is. So the medication levels the playing field. And I'm going to do an episode on that. Medication levels the playing field. Super important. So for those of you who are out there, you're going to have to try to decipher what is it that's true and what's not true. And you're going to do that based on the relationship you have with someone, as well as just the facts. Just the facts. So when you're trying to, and I should have done this, when you're trying to weigh in on a situation, that you're concerned about, you need to do the pros and the cons, especially if it's with your friend, with a friend. Because on the pro side, you're going to be able to say, this is what I know to be true. And on the con side, you'll be able to say, no, because this has never happened. And so why would I think after all this time that it's true? Because your mind and your brain is telling you it's true because it's playing tricks on you. Now, is it playing tricks on you on purpose? I don't think it matters, but probably not. And it's the disease that's speaking to your brain. It's the disease that's speaking to your brain. It isn't you. So you've got to logically think it through. Man, I wish this is a breakthrough. This is a breakthrough. That's exactly what it is. Because you're not going to have the opportunity to necessarily prove to your brain every time it tells you something that you don't think is true. But if you at least pull out the pros and the cons, that should help lean you in the right direction. So that means that I have to be very intentional about my situation, knowing that I still have to work and I still have to function every day. I still have to get enough sleep to be coherent when I'm training. I have to be able to take notes, interact with my supervisor. I can't just fall apart because I can't take any time off because there wouldn't be a good reason for me to be off of work. So I realized that I should have relied on my relationship. And so let me back up. So not necessarily the relationship between Philidia and I, but more what I know to be true about Philidia. And what I know to be true is that she's very strong. She loves God. She has a loving family that supports her. And that she would be able to get through this. So that's why you need to understand that if someone that suffers with depression isn't that far along in their coming to grips with what's going on with them, but also coming to grips with what's going on with them, but also better understanding how situations play out, gosh, you just would be in constant turmoil. And I hate to say it, but that's why people kill themselves. Because they're not able to be proactive. Because they're not able to see the silver lining. Because they're not able to see the rainbow that's at the end of the day. They don't believe that joy comes in the morning because they're experiencing the pain now. So they don't have that hope at that moment. And that's why they end their lives. So we got to figure out how to teach people to be more proactive and to think things through. Because when you think things through, you realize that most things that are going on are not as bad as you think. But people say it's all about your mindset and what you believe and what you subscribe to. Super important. We have talked quite a bit about how depression affects us, about serotonin, and the ways that depression weighs us down. But what are some of the ways that can help us cope better? We must learn to relax. Sometimes all we need to do is take a deep breath and count to 10. To allow our mind to recline and take a rest. Remember to look ahead in order to make sure you are heading in the right direction. Oftentimes, going through a bout of depression causes personal, professional, and emotional setbacks. Dealing with depression coupled with the different happenings in the world, COVID-19, all the racial tension that's going on, can make it very hard to cope. It seems every day there is a reminder of the sadness and the hopelessness you may feel. But here, what you need to do is start to reprogram your mind in order to overcome depression and situations that make you sad. There must be an instant response produced when the sad thoughts and feelings begin to surface. The sadness that you feel, the hopelessness that you feel, the darkness that you feel must be replaced with thoughts of happiness and good feelings. So go back and think about what makes you sad and try to replace that with something positive. You must focus on the positives. The more you focus on the positives, the easier it will become to defeat depression the moment it surfaces. Simply do not allow the cloud of despair and regret to permeate your thinking. I always say how important you are and that your life is worth living because oftentimes those who suffer with a mental illness feel like their life isn't worth living. But I guarantee you that there is a purpose to your existence. And someone out there is waiting for you to have a breakthrough so that you can help them. If you begin to focus your mind on the good and leave the bad behind, you will begin to experience exponential change. Even if you cannot recall the last time you experienced happiness, a positive thought, or had a good day, you can still overcome your circumstances. You have all the wherewithal and all it takes on the inside of you. I always like to share the 5 behaviors that you can implement right away, starting today, to fight depression. Number 1, spend at least 15 minutes every single day in the sunlight. Don't sit in a dark room with the blinds drawn. Go outside and just let the sun shine down on your face. Number 2, exercise or move around for at least 10 to 15 minutes every single day. Walking around your house will do, walking your dogs will do, going to the park and walking, just something to exercise your mind. Number 3, commit to completing at least 2 tasks every day, no matter how hard they may seem. Watering the grass, writing a letter, washing the dishes, taking a shower, mailing a letter, making a phone call, or even writing a check. Oftentimes, people who suffer from depression have a hard time remembering things, and a lot of their bills go unpaid because of that. Number 4, do something that lifts your spirits. Listen to some music, call a friend, start a blog. Maybe you like to cook. Go back into the kitchen and start that up again. Number 5, make sure the room that you occupy is bright, has windows, and is a happy, happy place. Because you must remember that giving up is never an option and you've got to stay in the game of life. So if you're out there and you're listening to Win Over Depression right now and you feel as if you just can't take it anymore, that your life is over and no one's coming to your rescue, take a deep breath for a moment, stop and think about those who love you and care about you and want to see you on this side of heaven. Can you see them? Can you feel them with their arms around you? There are people who love you, they care about you, they don't want to see you in harm's way. Even if you don't kill yourself for someone else, that's okay. Do it for them. Don't take those pills. Don't sit in that car in the garage and turn the motor on. Don't step off the curb. Your life is worth living, and you too can win over depression. And thinking back and wondering about how I became depressed, I just remember my parents being separated and getting a divorce, being in college, and that's what I've kind of pinpointed. And it's been an uphill battle, but I am so much better now, and it's because I had to decide that I was going to become proactive in dealing with this mental health issue, that I was going to learn about it, I was going to study it, and I was going to figure out how I can push myself through it. Now, don't get me wrong. I suffer from depression and I still have my days where I'm not feeling my best. But despite that, there are more days that I do feel well. You can get there too, my friend. You can get there too. Have faith in yourself. Don't give up. Remember, you can subscribe to my podcast, Win Over Depression. You can find me on YouTube, Win Over Depression. You can like and subscribe to my Facebook page, Through the Eyes of Depression. You can also find me on Pinterest at TT Mental Health Expert. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at Tamera Trotter. That's Tamera Trotter, Trotter. Please consider becoming a patron. Go to www.patreon.com Tamera Trotter. As little as $5 to $10 per month will help me spread more awareness about mental health and allow me to take my movement to the next level. Thank you so very much for listening, and I will see you in the next podcast. Please keep the faith, knowing that the sun does come up and the sun will keep you in the game of life. Don't give up on yourself, because I certainly will not give up on you. Keep your head up, my friend. Keep your head up.